Hi everyone, welcome back. My blaster build is complete, so today I'm going to take some time and walk you through what I did here. If you're looking for more details, please check out my RPF Build Log in the description below, as well as the other parts of my YouTube build series. So why don't we get started here? So I think generally from a painting standpoint, all of this standard SMG gun section, so basically like the receiver to the stock, the muzzle, etc., all of those received a layer of VHT wrinkle paint, and that kind of got everything started. But let's go to the front here, and you can see the muzzle here. And then with the front sight, I did make some modifications here. So what I ended up doing was I used some milliput, and I basically reinforced the front sight guard, filled in the seams as much as I could, and I think it ended up being overall turned out quite well. The T-tracks here are from Fieldmarshal. I ended up using, actually this entire blaster is from Fieldmarshal, so that's all available as a kit. But basically with the T-tracks, I used the heat gun method with this. Was able to get the bends conforming pretty easily. I did try the hot water method, and that just did not turn out well. It did not heat up the tracks nearly enough. This is all functional, so I'll get to that in a second towards the end. And as we move along here, it is functional from a trigger standpoint there. The bolt also comes back, so it gives it a little bit of realism. And you can see the scope here. The scope, this was achieved through a couple, actually probably about 4 or 5 different layers of paint. The brass colored, the satin, the textured paint. This is, I think, satin black with the flat black on the ends here. I think it all ended up turned out pretty well. The white on the scope is from crayon, so just heated that up, melted it in, and did some work around that. So I think that all turned out nicely. The one exception from the painting is the end cap. This is all aluminum black finish. So this took a couple different series of treatments, but I think that turned out quite nicely. Gives a little bit of a contrast, so a little bit more character there. That particular bolt I changed out to a hex screw. I believe stock came with a Phillips screw or Phillips bolt head, and just didn't kind of work for me. It was a little too bright, didn't want to paint it, but changed that out. That was pretty easily to do. Scope rail here, I believe this was just satin black, so that was easy enough. Moving along to this side, you see the counter here. A couple modifications I made was added the screws there, just to give it a little bit more, I guess, a replica feel to the original. This particular button does function. Well, it moves in and out. It doesn't actually change the counter there. And then you'll see there, I also added a screw to the bottom, and this part was all, I guess, held onto the scope rail through 2 screws. I put on the other side, so I believe I have a video on that, so you could check that out if you're interested. The selector switch here is also functional, so gives it a nice bit of realism there. And if I ever wanted to put lights and sound in this, that is a functional switch, so I just need to wire that part up. Let's see, the power cylinders, these are just held on by a couple of magnets. did a little bit of weathering there. I think everything turned out quite nicely. There's a look at the magwell. This is a vintage magazine from Fieldmarshal, and I really like the patina to it. Gives a little bit more character, a little bit more realism to the look. And this just sits up there for now. That's really not going anywhere. So if I have any concerns about that, I'll probably just epoxy that down, or maybe just to use a little bit of E6000, because that's been my go-to adhesive for most of my builds. And there's a look on the underside. And so all of these texture parts of the paint, I just use a couple different layers, a couple different techniques, use some mascal in some areas just to give it a little bit of texture and breaks up some of that. Okay. There you go. And then this part does function in the sense that it does fold out. Like that. There you go. So I think this turned out quite nicely. Really enjoyed the build. It was really fun. Was able to do a couple modifications too. So one thing here with the hinge, I did attach the hinge mount to the receiver using some JB Weld. I did shorten the screws here, so then this bolt can slide freely in and out. I did trim also the screws that holds on the rear sight, as well as the end cap catch right here. So yeah, so I think that's been holding up quite nicely. And then also this part here, this is just the cover for the hex bolts. I think this came off of one of my, I had some extra of these caps from my Mazbox build, so I repurposed those as I had like a bag of 100 or so. But those are just held on with E6000. So if I needed to remove this or do whatnot, I could easily remove that. But yeah, I think that's everything. So hopefully this has been helpful for some of you guys who have Fieldmarshal's kit. If you have any questions, please drop me a comment. And otherwise, please check out the build log for more details. Check out the other parts of the video series if you want to see how the Hangsler counter modifications were done and various elements to this particular build. But otherwise, you can find all of these parts on Fieldmarshal's website, blasterfactory.com. And yeah, thanks for following along. This has been great. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Hey guys, one more thing I forgot to add. I'm presuming some of you might be curious about how much this thing weighs. So let's get to it. So let's see, we've got a scale there. Turn it on. Hopefully you guys can see that. It's 0 grams right now. Get this positioned. See if it's centered. Yep, that looks pretty good. Not touching anything else. It's fully on the scale. So we're looking at 2,039 grams all in.